Your operations are the heartbeat to your business. I created this podcast to help you balance your childlike innovation with parent-like efficiency. Welcome to Daily Ops Boost. Team, welcome back to Daily Ops Boost. Stoked that you're here today. Wanted to jump directly into our subject today, which is talking about pod structures. And pod structures were really made famous by like Silicon Valley startups, especially like big SaaS platforms, things like that. But essentially, pod structures are like in the most basic form. Think of them as like kind of like an autonomous unit within your agency, right? Where they can handle a certain amount of clients with a certain amount of deliverables, and you know that inside of that pod you have a certain amount of revenue, a certain amount of profit being generated. And typically they're made up of members of various departments, right? So it might be creative, it might be paid ads, copywriting, email marketing, and they all work towards a similar goal with that client, right? And here's why exactly that I think you should have pod structures. If you have multiple services within your agency, one is just comes down to efficiency. When you have a well structured pod, they can operate without constant oversight, especially from a management team. They're very self-sufficient, especially if they're very good at their job, and they get a lot of internal feedback inside of their pod ecosystem. So a lot of times they're being held to the standard of the pod versus the standard of the individual, which can be a really effective way to grow a business because there's less management that is involved. We can look at KPIs across a pod, and we can see who the weak links are very easily by simply having some of that data come back to us. Now, another reason that we might want to start generating pod structure is that it's a little bit more client-centric, as in like each pod is more dedicated to a specific client, specific project, or specific types of clients. Like I remember inside of our agency, we had a pod structure specifically for health and beauty brands, right? And those were the brands that were like, hey, this pod, they work really well with these style of brands. And then we had a pod that was more like automotive forward, and it was a bunch of dudes, and it was like all like the very masculine energy type brands. And then we had a pod that was more like the feminine energy type brands. And so you want to ensure that the pods have almost like specialization or like a very focused lane that they're staying in, because like that specialization just makes them that much more lethal, right? Also, you're going to find that with pod structures, you have a lot more scalability and a lot more clarity on when you need to hire people. So as you bring in more clients, instead of inflating an existing team, you simply just can launch a new pod, or you inflate a team to a certain point where you branch them off into a second pod, which can be a really nice way to transition into a different team structure or a larger team structure, right? And also like the oversight of clients really helps with the scalability as well. Not all of your teammates need to be in the know on every single brand, every single client that you have. They're only managing a certain number of brands, right? So our pods inside of our agency were roughly no more than 20 clients at a time, depending on the size, of course, but anywhere between I think it was like 12 and 18 clients at a time. That's about as much as one pod could manage. Now we had another pod that managed like about 25 clients, but they were like smaller projects, more one-off. It was a little bit faster as far as like production went for our creative team, right? So just know like scalability does play a factor into this as well. And then also, it's incredible for cross-functional learning within the team. So if you think about when you bring on a new teammate, like sometimes it's very difficult to get them trained up. But if they're working alongside other veterans that are inside of that pod, and normally when we scaled out like a second pod and we brought people on, we would do a mix of veteran talent with rookie talent. And they can learn from each other's expertise inside of a pod structure like that, right? So there's a lot of benefits to running a pod structure. And in the agency space, it's honestly tried and true. I probably wouldn't scale an agency any other way, just for those reasons that I stated alone. And structuring your agencies or your agency around pods might seem like a leap and might seem pretty difficult, but it's a leap towards more scalability, right? More efficiency, more improved client satisfaction. That's what it really comes down to. And if you're looking to build the most efficient, most effective team possible, especially if you're running an agency, then I would lead towards a pod structure. We even utilize it inside of our consultancy, right? So keep that in mind as you're building and growing your team. Pod structure might be the thing for you. If you have questions on it, you can always reach out to me. Shoot me a DM. happy to answer any questions for you guys. Hopefully that was a helpful one for you guys today. We will see you on the next episode. Peace. Yo, thank you so much for listening in to Daily Ops Boost. We really appreciate your attention. If you're enjoying the shorter form content, you're gonna absolutely love the long form content that we post over on YouTube. We do a live stream every single week, 7 p.m. Central Time. Go check it out. It's on YouTube. It's called Agency Therapy. We'll see you over there.